Hi, I'm the Moorlander and this is Moorlander EDC. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a grey day outside today, so I thought I'd come indoors, stay dry, and we will have a look at the Studies and Observation Group Terminus XR LTE. Now, straight off the bat, I think as I do with all of my videos when I'm sent products, this was sent to me free of charge. But it is always with the understanding between myself and whichever manufacturer sends me something that I will be able to give my frank and honest opinion. Although this has, as I say, I've not been paid to review this favourably, and I want to give you my full and honest opinion. Try to stay a little bit away from opinions, but it certainly doesn't affect the integrity. I think that's probably the best word. Hopefully, if you've seen some of my content before, I try to stay as honest as possible with my reviews. And it's not just going to be one knife today, because this is part of a family. This is the third sibling. You have the Terminus, you have the Terminus XR, and the Terminus XR LTE, which I have all three. So we'll be able to see a little bit more from each of those today. So what I'll do is turn the camera around. You can see more from this while I'm doing that. If you like this at any point, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. Let's turn the camera around and look at the XR LTE. Okay, so as we usually do, we'll go around the knife, look at some of the materials and the measurements and that sort of stuff. Actually, let's go into the measurements straight away. So I'll give you these in centimeters, but what I'll also do is leave my wee inch ruler here so that you can see what they're roughly equivalent to. So the overall length in centimeters is 18.2, so that's from the tip to the butt of the knife when it is open. When it is closed, it comes in at 10.6 centimeters. The blade on this, now when I talk about the blade, what I'm talking about is the actual cutting edge, so from the tip to the Spanish notch here. So it's important that we talk about that especially when I talk about knives here in the UK, because when we talk about the legality of knives, it goes on the cutting edge, which is this distance across the belly and then up through here to the tip. So it's not actually a straight line from the ricasso to the tip, it's this circumference here. So the cutting edge of this blade is 7.5 or 7.49 centimeters. Again, it is important at this point to point out, as far as that cutting edge is concerned, that would let it sit inside the UK requirements as far as what is legal and what is not legal. However, this is a locking knife and has a locking knife mechanism to keep it open. That means then that it's illegal to carry this in public without a justified reason to be doing so. Which is unfortunate. It's a great knife. It's not illegal to own. Obviously, I have one here. There'll be a lot of people around the world that will be able to own this and carry this in any situation. However, here in the UK, because it is a locking knife, to carry this in a public place without a perfectly good reason to be doing so, you will have this confiscated from you by a police officer if you're caught. So that's that bit. I always do that as far as knives and the legality of knives here in the UK. So that was the cutting edge. The blade stock, or at least the blade metal stock, is 2.5 millimeters thick. Now the actual blade itself, so if I bring in these other two quickly, hopefully you'll be able to see that these two in particular are made from the same steel. So the OG Terminus is made from BO1 steel, whereas these two here are the cryogenically treated CPM S35V Now, I sound like that I've just written that. I was trying not to sound like I was written it, but I just wanted to make sure that I got everything that's included in there, because there's quite a bit on there. So with your S35VN steel, you know, you're going really to the higher echelons of steels. You're moving away from your cheaper, more budget steels, and to make sure that the edge retention on these knives stays as solid for as long as possible, there is a cryo treat on here to keep that steel strong. One of the other differences with this is, or at least this knife, hopefully if you can see, if I bring that, will that zoom in? Yeah, that will zoom in a little bit better, is that you have a graphite titanium nitride coating on this one, which, I don't know, there's just something sexy about that. And I know it's bad to talk about inanimate objects in that way, but sometimes when you look at them, it just looks really nice. There is also a version of this with a gold covering to it as well, which again looks really nice. This, by the way, I've not mentioned, sorry, this is the carbon fiber graphite version. The graphite relating to the colour of the blade here, and carbon fiber is down to the scales. I think when we're really looking at the difference, because I know a lot of people will be tuning in, especially on this, to be trying to find out what is the main difference between the two. And that really is where the construction of the scales comes in. Now, I can't find my Torx head to be able to get these off. So what I'll hopefully do is leave an image here so that you can see. So with the Terminus XR, if I put these on the side here, if I'll bring them up a little bit closer. The Terminus XR has steel liners, and then it has carbon fiber. Actually, I think this is the G10 version, but it looks like carbon fiber. It then has the liners, and then it has scales across the top. Although it looks like a single piece, I don't know if this will pick this up, but there are two components to each side. So you still have a liner as such, and then you have a scale on the outside. The liner has been skeletized on the inside to help to reduce some weight, and then on the outside you have the normal scale, so that you're not putting your fingers in through the liner when you're wanting to use it. So it is still a two-part construction, or I suppose you could say maybe 5-part. You have 2 liners, a spacer, and then 2 scales on the outside. Actually, do you know what? Let's get straight into the similarities between the two. They both use the XR opening, or at least the XR lock. So when that closes, you can pull one of them back. I have tried it. It does work, but really you're pulling back on both sides. So with your thumb and forefinger, you pull that back, and you'll be able to see that then just pushes it out slightly. As far as being able to open this knife, you can do it in one of 3 ways. You can use the thumb stud to push it round. You can use the flicker, which works really well. A little caveat with this one though, and this really is just down to, I was going to say wear and tear then, but really it's breaking the knife in. Because I've had the XR a little bit longer, there you go, I ruined it. It does flick open just a little bit easier. I've had this now for roughly a month. I've been carrying it pretty much non-stop. So it's getting a little bit looser, which is great, but you'll find it just takes a little bit of wearing in. There are bearings in here which does make it super smooth. So there's the thumb stud, you can use the flick, or if you want to, you can pull them both back and flick it with your hand, and it will also deploy the knife as well. So they're pretty much identical. In fact, they are identical. They both use the XR. As far as the geometry of the knives are concerned, they're both a flat grind. The dimensions are pretty much identical. They're both clip points. Hopefully you can see you have this little swedge that comes in that dials down towards the end. They both have a bit of a tactical kind of look and feel to them. But you know, if you like that sort of knife, which I think most knife people do, then you know, that's great. As I've already mentioned, as far as the scales and the liners concerned, although you have the differences in the material, they are nigh on identical. As far as lengths, I think the XR is 1 millimeter longer, both open and closed. I think that must be something on the scales, mainly because this one does taper in slightly, a little bit more towards the edge. I've tried to see if I can work out the differences between the two where that millimeter comes in, but it's nigh on impossible to be able to find that. As far as the construction or being able to take these apart, you still have the center or the rotating pin. There is these 2 pins at the back here which hold the spacer in place, and then there is an extra pin to either be able to take off or remove the pocket clip. The pocket clip is a deep carry pocket clip. It's nice and tough as well. There is a really good spring to that. I've took this one off and completely forgotten where I put it. But if you wanted to, you can unfasten this. It has one of these where it slides into the spacer. So if you wanted to take it off, flip it around onto the other side, depending on whether you're a lefty or a righty, then you can do that. As far as the function and the opening of each of these is concerned, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, they are 100% ambidextrous. Instead of having, you might find that sometimes they have a thumb stud on one side that can be removed around. I'm not a very good thumb stud kind of operator. I need to maybe get a little bit better at that. But you can use these ambidextrous with either hand, and there's very little difference between the two. The only difference that I've found is purely, as I've already mentioned, is that this one's just been worn in a little bit longer and has a little bit more fluidity to it. But I've found that having used this for quite some time, it's really starting to wear in really nicely. Ergonomics wise, I mean, look at them. They really are the same knife. There's very little difference between the two. However, on the Terminus XR, hopefully you can see here, so where the finger choil area is here and across the spine, what they've done is they've cut into this so that you've got more of a berm that your fingers wrap around, but that tapers off as it gets towards the end. Now, when it's in the actual palm of your hand, you don't really notice that much of a difference because you've got more nerve endings in your fingers to be able to really notice that ergonomic difference. Whereas what they've done with the XR LTE is just continue that. So the lines on this, if you're a purist and really do like to see those symmetrical lines, then you can see here around the finger choil through the palm swell, that line carries itself all the way through across the spine there as well. That line also carries itself all the way through. So the ergonomics on the XR LTE are actually a little bit better. Now, when I say a little bit better, I'm talking about, I was going to say small thing really. It feels like a small thing because, as I say, they are very different knives. But I think what it gives you is the option, if you prefer one style over the other, again, you have this with the two knives. Now, how far are we in now? We're probably about 10 minutes in, and I haven't got to the big thing. And that's the point that I know you're all here, and I know you've all been waiting for, and I've been dragging it out for as long as possible. But what you are all here to know is, does the LTE feel lighter? Okay, so we're talking in grams first. The LTE is actually the lighter of them all, which you'd expect, followed by the Terminus and then the Terminus XR. The LTE comes in at 63.4 grams. The OG Terminus comes in at 82.2 grams, and the the XR, or XR, I suppose that's the XR LTE, but let's just call this the XR. The XR comes in at 90.7 grams, which is 2.2 ounces, 2.9 ounces, and 3.2 ounces. It's not that much, but if I just take that one out of the equation and we round it to roughly, this is 60 grams, that is 90 grams. The XR is roughly 150 times heavier than the LTE, XR LTE, 150%, sorry, heavier. That's mainly the difference between the two, as the amount that they've been able to shave off using carbon fiber scales in here, or at least a carbon fiber liner over the steel liner that they have in this. Now, just to test, and this is a a rough test, I handed this to Mrs. Moorlander. And a blind taste test, I handed these into both hands, and it was very easy for her to pick out that the XR LTE was definitely heavier than the XR. But I think if you're the type of person that appreciates aesthetics as well, to be able to create yourself a really nice all black EDC, oh, I've got that there. I mean this is a great carry and looks really, really good. Now I know what you're thinking at this point. Which one of the three do I like the most? And although they are three very similar knives, I think there are two subcategories for each of these, mainly because this one is a slip joint and these two are locking knives. I certainly appreciate the fact that with the OG Terminus, that with this one here in the UK, generally I can carry this anywhere with me. It is UK compliant. Now when I say UK compliant, there aren't specifically UK laws. There is an English law, a Scottish law, a Welsh law and an Irish law, but generally you'll find that there are similarities between them, and mainly it's around it being a slip joint and the length of the blade. There's slight differences with them all, however they're all very similar. So as far as UK as a whole, there's no real issues with me carrying this. It's still rock solid. I say the detent on this is possibly the strongest detent that I've found on any slip joint. If you have any concern over slip joints closing on you, the detent on the OG Terminus really is rock solid. So that's a great knife, it really is, and I do enjoy carrying this. I find with this one it just works, and well, I suppose that's really what you expect from any knife, isn't it? That it works. But then we get to the XR and the XR LTE, and it's too hard. It really is too hard, because I think there are positives and advantages for each of these. Essentially, we've looked at the fact that they are, I mean, pound for pound, which I suppose is the wrong term to use. They are pretty much identical knives as far as size, weight, construction. The differences then comes down to that the LTE is the lighter of the two. You're talking 30 grams between them. When this one's in my pocket, I know that it's in my pocket. I mean, it's not some behemoth that I'm drudging around with me, but there's a security that I know that I can feel it. I'm shaking my leg like it's in my pocket now, but I know that there's a feeling that when it's in my pocket, I know that it's there. Whereas the LTE, when it's in there, it just disappears, because that extra 30 grams. I mean, this one is roughly 150% heavier than this one, but again, it's nice to have a heavier knife. I like the finesse, or at least the way that this has been. The scales on here, again, as we've looked at, are tapered all the way through the scales. So as far as ergonomics is concerned, the LTE fits in your hand a little bit better than the XR. I get that, and I quite like that. the what do we call this? Is it a swathe, or the way that this has been cut in is perfectly uniform across the spine, across the finger choil here, and where the hand swell is. But I also like the characteristics. I feel that the XR, how this just comes in through here but then tapers out. Same across the spine. You have that curve where your finger curls over it, but then it tapers out towards the end. Again, there's no, this one isn't better than this one, but there's just slight differences. On the XR LTE, I love the coating on this. The coating on this, the titanium nitride coating on this, really is, oh, it's just got such a very, well, it's got that very nice feel to it, but I don't know. I think it's an intangible thing that you can't really, I don't know how to comment. I don't feel I have the words on why I like this. It just looks awesome. But then again, I like the raw steel of this one. So I think if I was to say I preferred one, it would be the LTE. But we're not talking about massive differences between the two. I feel that what Studies and Observation Group has took already a very good knife and just refined it, and I think that's what the evolution from this to this is. It's just subtle refinements that have took it just to the next step. But when I'm talking to the next step, this is a 10 out of 10. This is a 10.1 out of 10. You know, I don't necessarily give number values to the content that I make, but hopefully that proves the point that there's very little between the two. And I think if you're after a heavier knife that does the job, then you should go for this one. If you prefer something that's a little bit more of a lighter carry but still does the job of this one, then you could go for the LTE. But I think either way, no matter which one you go for, you're definitely going to get a great knife out of the two. So there you go. That was a lot of stumbling around for that last probably 10 minutes. So hopefully I've helped you if it is that you were umming and ahhing between the two on which one to get. Massive thank you to SOG Knives Europe, or Studies and Observation Group Knives Europe, for sending me this way. You guys are ace. I love you guys, and obviously I have to say this, but I look forward to future collaborations. But I'll leave all of their links and everything in the description below so you can see more from them, and also SOG Knives from the US. There'll also be some of my links in the description below to follow me on social media. But for now, stay safe, stay Moorlander, and stay EDC.